All right, let's get into it. Today, we're heading back to Victorian London to uncover the story of a doctor who didn't just want to treat his patients, he wanted to completely master the machinery of life itself.
So to really get why his ideas were so radical, you first have to understand the medical world he was walking into. I mean, can you believe this? At the turn of the 19th century, this was the opinion from a leading surgeon. The ovaries, the very engine of reproduction, were basically considered irrelevant for medical practice. The female body was seen as this great mystery, sure, but mostly a diseased one, and certainly not something worth any deep scientific investigation.
But fast forward just 50 years, and that was all about to change, thanks to one man, Dr. William Tyler Smith. He looked at the female body and didn't see chaos or some unknowable mystery. No, he saw a complex, law-abiding system, a machine he was absolutely determined to understand, map out, and ultimately control.
So who was this guy who just decided to rewrite the rulebook? Well, let's just say he was the definition of an outsider.
William Tyler Smith was not born into the medical elite, not by a long shot. He came from a humble background, showed up in London with literally nothing. But what he did have was this fierce, burning ambition. And despite suffering from poor health and having what people called an ungainly manner, his mind was sharp as a tack. His big break finally came when he landed a job at The Lancet, which was one of the most powerful medical journals of the era.
And this is where he really found his footing, because his greatest weapon, it was his pen. Smith used his position at the journal to wage a full-on war against the unlicensed quacks and snake oil salesmen that were everywhere in Victorian England. He argued passionately that a real doctor's authority came from science, from a deep physiological understanding, not from some secret recipe book. He was fighting to create one single, unified, and scientific medical profession.
And at the absolute heart of his crusade was this brand new and pretty revolutionary theory about how the body actually works.
This was his big idea, the reflex action theory. Think of it like this. He believed the body had a limited energy budget. And for women, he argued, the menstrual cycle was this incredibly powerful energy system that could affect everything, the mind, the body, you name it. But here's the crucial part. He believed it wasn't random. It was all governed by predictable, scientific laws.
This chart really spells out the battle he was fighting. Smith wanted to drag the whole field away from what he called empirical midwifery, which he saw as just an art, based on tradition and old wives' tales. He wanted to move it toward physiologic obstetrics, a real science grounded in natural laws. And hey, if birth follows laws, then a doctor with scientific knowledge isn't just a nice-to-have, he's an absolute necessity, there to intervene when things go wrong.
Now, this new way of thinking wasn't just some theory scribbled in a notebook. Smith actually translated it into a physical invention, a tool that perfectly captured his mechanical view of the female body.
You see, he was completely convinced that the length of a pregnancy wasn't arbitrary at all. He theorized that it was directly tied to the rhythm of the menstrual cycle. To him, it was all a predictable clockwork process.
And to put this theory into practice, he created the periodoscope. It was this rotating dial designed to map out that rhythm. His theory was that conception happens shortly after a period, so he calculated that labor would likely start around the time of the 10th missed cycle. This was one of the very first attempts to actually quantify the female body, to turn predicting a due date from pure guesswork into a mechanical calculation. Pretty wild, right? But here's the thing. An invention and a theory, they aren't enough. To really change medicine, Smith knew he had to build an institution.
1858 was a massive year for him. The Medical Act, which he had fought for, finally created an official list of qualified doctors. And that very same year, Smith co-founded the Obstetrical Society of London. His whole goal was to take midwifery, long seen as the Cinderella of medicine, and turn it into a respected specialty. And it worked. Just 2 years later, he was its president.
But this new society needed more than just ideas. It needed an identity. And for the modern obstetrician, that identity was going to be built around their tools.
Just listen to this quote from the Society's big exhibition in 1866. It's so telling. Instruments weren't just tools. They were tangible symbols of progress. They were the physical proof that obstetrics was now a science, a field for male experts with specialized knowledge. These devices were absolutely central to the professional identity they were trying to build. And this focus on creating a profession with standardized education, it led them to favor certain tools over others. Take Tevectus, a single-bladed instrument. It was seen as tricky, nuanced, really hard to teach to big groups of students. But the forceps?
They were so much easier to describe, to standardize in a lecture, and to promote as the definitive instrument for the modern scientific obstetrician.
And Smith was their #1 fan. He saw forceps as a miraculous, life-saving device, a humane alternative to the absolutely horrific practice of craniotomy, where a baby's head was destroyed just to save the mother. For him, forceps represented the total triumph of scientific intervention over brutal, grim necessity.
But, and this is a really big but, for all of his forward-thinking work, Smith's legacy is anything but simple. His career was just a masterclass in contradictions.
I mean, he was a radical and a conservative all at the same time. On one hand, you have this daring innovator who pioneered dangerous overotomy surgeries, ignoring critics who called surgeons belly rippers. But on the other hand, he was dead set against using chloroform for pain relief during a normal labor. And why? Well, it all went back to his own reflex theory. He argued that pain was a necessary biological signal, and anesthesia was a dangerous interference that could stop contractions.
So what we're left with is this profoundly dual legacy. Yes, he absolutely succeeded in elevating midwifery into a science and creating the role of the modern obstetrician. That's progress. But his theories also had a serious downside. The very language he and his colleagues used, framing menstruation as a monthly illness or a disappointed pregnancy, helped to pathologize natural female functions in a way that has lingered for generations.
And that leaves us with a really important question to think about. Dr. Smith basically built a house that modern obstetrics still lives in. He laid this incredible foundation of scientific rigor and professional dignity. But it makes you wonder, how much of his era's biases, this view of the female body as a machine to be managed, are still built into the very architecture of that house today?